In this video, we're going to get started with setting up the enemy for our platformer. So I've already got my dog controlled by the arrow keys and my little level here, and my collectible items. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up a scene for the enemy. We're going to set this up just like the dog, so it's going to have a kinematic body 2D as the root, and a collision shape, and I'm going to go ahead and just give it a rectangular collision shape, and a sprite. I'm just going to use a single image for mine. You can, of course, use an animated sprite. I'm not going to worry about that at the moment for you because you should already know how to set that stuff up. So I've just got my single image here. Let's parent that properly. If you want to use this little shrimp or lobster character, you can find him in the find him on D2L in the last D2L announcement. All right, so let's get him quickly set up there. So the first thing we're going to do with our little enemy here is create his movement. So I'm going to go ahead and save this just so it's saved. Call him shrimp, or you could call him enemy. I'm going to go ahead and rename my root node here. And let's go ahead and add a script. All right, so we want to set this up basically just like what we did for the dog. So we're going to need a velocity variable. And we're going to need our physics process function. Now remember, this one's going to be slightly different than the player in that we're not using the arrow keys to move. We're just going to have him move back and forth like a kind of normal enemy platformer. So let's quickly look back at the dog. So in our dog, remember, we have all of these things that are basically setting up the velocity vector to be what we want, and then this line here, which is what actually does the moving. So for our shrimp, we don't need to worry about inputs. We're just going to move. So let's go ahead and just use move and slide, and our velocity, and you can still use the same vector for the up vector, which is going to be 0 and -1. All right, so right now we could run this, vector 2. Right now we could run this, but our shrimp still wouldn't be moving because we have not at this point assigned an actual velocity. So since we want our shrimp to go ahead and start moving right at the beginning, we can go ahead and do that just when we create our velocity vector. So I'm going to have him move to the right to start out with. I'm going to save all that. And then we need to, before this will actually do anything useful, actually add our shrimp into the level somewhere. So I'm going to grab shrimp.tscene. Remember the tscene, not the PNG. That will not actually add the shrimp, just the shrimp image. I'm going to place him slightly above a platform here. And let's run that. And as we can see, he moves, and he just continuously moves off the screen with no gravity and stuff yet. And that's because all we've implemented right now is the move to the right. So just like our dog, we need to add in gravity. So let's do that next. We're going to do, again, exactly the same thing we did at the dog. Just remember, once I've taught you something, I kind of assume you know it, so you can always look back. So for gravity, remember, we are using adding a number. I've got gravity defined up at the top of mine, but you could just be adding a number there too. So let's go ahead and add in gravity for the shrimp. So velocity.y plus equals 7. And we don't need to change this, again, remember, because that will already be, we're just changing what's in velocity here. So let's run that, and now we see he walks there and he falls off. All right. So you'll notice he gets faster over time as he falls. That's because we're always adding to velocity. You can fix that, and we may look at that later at the end of this video if we have time, but otherwise I'll let you figure that one out on your own. So what we've got right now is that our enemy walks and then he falls off edges. So what we'd like is for him to walk back and forth on the platform. Now there are a number of ways you can do this, and we're not covering a lot of what Godot can do, but there's a way you can do this given the things you already know. And if you remember from our dog, we had some functions to detect if he was touching something on the floor, if he was touching the ceiling or if he was touching a wall. So what we can do for our shrimp is simply add walls here. And then if he's touching a wall, we just have him reverse direction. So let's go back to our level real quick. And I'm just going to quickly add some walls to our little area where the shrimp is going to be. You could theoretically make these walls invisible, so there was not an actual image there, just a collision box. Although remember, the dog will collide with those too, and there are ways of dealing with that. But there are, again, I'm kind of showing you some basics. I'm showing you how to use the things you already know to do some cool things. What you already know is actually quite a lot when it comes to games. So I've added in the walls. Let's modify our script here. So now what we want to do is if we're touching a wall, we want to reverse direction. So remember, we can use we used is on floor. If is on, remember we used the is on floor earlier with the dog. We can use is on wall. And what we want to do is reverse direction. And this is kind of a place where you can be a little clever if you want. You could have some if statements in here that say if the velocity is 100, switch it to negative 100. If it's negative 100, switch it to positive 100. But if you think about this with some clever math, what we're really saying is velocity.x equals itself times negative 1. We're basically just switching it from negative to positive. So you can do it all in this one line. Again, if it's simpler for you to write out those if statements, don't feel bad about that. You guys are beginning programmers, and that is totally cool. And so now we can see that our shrimp does indeed move back and forth, and maybe we would like him to not moonwalk and actually face the direction. So both a regular sprite and your animated sprite both have this flip H, so we can use that as well with our shrimp if you had an animated sprite here to be pretty similar. Remember that to access a child, we can use the $sign notation, so $, and in this case mine is called shrimp because I forgot to put the I in there, dot flip H. And this is another place where we can be clever. You could again put in an if statement that says if it's positive and then set it to negative, and if it's negative, set it to positive. But we can also, again, do something here called a toggle and say it equals not, the exclamation point there means not, whatever it was before. So this is basically saying whatever was in shrimp H before, take the opposite. So if it was true, now it'll be false. If it was false, now it'll be true. And put it into what is currently flip H. So let's run that real quick and just make sure that works. All right. And there we go. We've got our basic shrimp movement. So in the next video, we will look at setting it up so that our dog can jump on it or be killed by it, depending on whether he hits it from the top or from the side.